The signal came on a cold morning in 2157. Dr. Lisa Martinez was drinking her third coffee when her computer started beeping. She thought it was an error at first. The numbers on her screen did not make sense. They were too perfect, too organized. She ran the test again. Then a third time. "Peter, come look at this," she called to her partner. Dr. Peter Wallace walked over and stared at the screen. His face went pale. "That's not natural. That's mathematics. Pure mathematics. From beyond Neptune," Lisa whispered. Within 2 days, the world knew the truth. Humans were not alone in the universe. The ship that appeared was massive, bigger than any city on Earth. It hung in space like a silver mountain. And it was waiting. Commander Jake Stevens got the call at midnight. He was a military man, tall and serious, with gray starting to show in his dark hair. They told him he would lead the team to meet the aliens. He had 48 hours to prepare. "Why me?" he asked his superior. "Because you stay calm when things go wrong. And Jake, things might go very wrong." Jake chose his team carefully. Amy Richardson was a diplomat who spoke 7 languages. She was smart and could read people well. Colonel Ryan Burke was his military advisor, a big man with sharp eyes who missed nothing. Together, they boarded a shuttle and flew toward the alien ship. The ship was called Harmony's Voice. When they stepped inside, Jake felt small. The walls were smooth and changed colors. The ceiling was so high, he could not see it clearly. In the center of a huge room stood the alien. It looked like an insect made of crystal. Light moved through its body in strange patterns. When it spoke, a machine translated its words into English. "Welcome, humans. I am Ambassador Zekthar of the Zenthari people. We represent the Galactic Council." Amy stepped forward and smiled. She had practiced her greeting for hours, but the ambassador kept talking as if she had not spoken. "You are a young species, very young. The galaxy has rules that keep peace between 12,000 different species. You must follow these rules." "We're listening," Jake said calmly. "You cannot have your own military. You cannot vote in council decisions. You cannot trade freely with other species. More advanced races will protect you. This is how we help newcomers." Ryan's hand moved toward his weapon. Jake caught his eye and shook his head slightly. "For how long?" Jake asked. 500 of your years. Maybe less, if you prove yourselves peaceful and obedient." Amy's smile disappeared. "That's 20 generations. You're asking us to give up our freedom for 20 generations?" "We are not asking," the ambassador said. The crystal body seemed to glow brighter. "This is how things work. You will accept, or you will be considered dangerous. Dangerous species are dealt with harshly." The meeting lasted 3 more hours, but nothing changed. The Galactic Council had made their decision. Humanity would be controlled, watched, and kept weak. When Jake and his team returned to Earth, they brought back news that made the whole world angry. President Daniel Hayes was a young leader, only 45 years old. He had won the election by promising to unite Earth and push for space exploration. Now he stood before the United Nations with a different message. "They treat us like children who cannot be trusted with matches. But we are not children. We are humans. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We have split atoms and touched the surface of other worlds. We will not be caged." But the cage was already closing. Within weeks, alien ships arrived. They were called peacekeepers, though everyone knew what they really were. They were guards. They positioned themselves around Earth, watching everything. They took control of mining operations on asteroids. They stopped human ships from traveling too far from home. Captain Nicole Harper commanded one of the few military ships Earth was allowed to keep. It was called Defiance, though it could barely live up to that name. Nicole watched from her bridge as alien ships took away resources that humans had worked hard to mine. "This is theft," her first officer Ben Carson said. His voice shook with anger. We found those asteroids. We built those mines. They call it proper management, Nicole replied. Her jaw was tight. They think we're too stupid to manage our own resources. Ben hit the console with his fist. We invented faster-than-light travel on our own. We built colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. We did all of this without their help. And now, they act like we're primitives who just discovered fire. Nicole said nothing. There was nothing to say. The Galactic Council had the power, and power made the rules. But on Earth and in secret bases on Mars and Europa, something was beginning. President Hayes had given quiet orders to scientists and engineers. If humanity could not be free through diplomacy, they would become free through strength. Dr. Kevin Wu led a team at a hidden facility under the surface of Mars. They studied every piece of alien technology they could find. Every peacekeeper ship that passed overhead was scanned. Every communication signal was recorded and analyzed. They think we're too primitive to understand their technology, Kevin told his partner, Dr. Samantha Torres. That's good. Let them think that. Samantha pulled up images of a Zenthari shield system. Their shields rotate through 3 frequencies. Always the same pattern. Always the same timing. They haven't changed their technology in thousands of years. Why would they? Kevin asked. When you're the strongest, you stop innovating. You stop expecting threats. That's their weakness. That's our opportunity. The work was slow and had to stay secret. But piece by piece, humans began to understand the technology that kept them trapped. They learned how the shields worked. They figured out how the faster-than-light engines operated. They discovered that the Galactic Council's technology was powerful, but old. Very old. More importantly, they learned that the galaxy had been at peace for so long that most species had forgotten how to really fight. Wars were rare. When they happened, they followed ancient rules. Ships lined up and fired at each other until one side gave up. It was almost like a game with agreed-upon rules. Jake Stevens met with Kevin Wu in a secret meeting 6 months after first contact. They sat in a plain room deep underground, where no alien sensors could reach. Can we match their technology? Jake asked. In 5 years, maybe 10, yes, Kevin answered. But that's not the question you should ask. What should I ask? Ask if we can beat their technology. Jake leaned forward. Explain. They fight the way they've always fought. Same weapons, same tactics, same thinking. They've been doing it for thousands of years. But we're new. We don't have old habits. We can invent our own way of fighting. Ryan Burke, who was also at the meeting, smiled for the first time in weeks. I'm saying we win, Kevin replied. There's a difference. The warning came 15 years after first contact. The Keswick horde was moving through the galaxy like a storm. They were raiders, killers who lived on their ships and took what they wanted from others. They had destroyed colonies on the edge of Council space. Now they were coming closer to the center, where the richer worlds lived. The Galactic Council held emergency meetings. The Zenthari ambassador spoke to representatives from thousands of worlds. They decided to pull their peacekeeper ships away from less important areas. They needed to protect the core worlds where the powerful species lived. Earth was not considered important. They're abandoning us, President Hayes said. He was older now, with more gray in his hair. 15 years of dealing with the Council had tired him, but his eyes were still sharp. Fleet Admiral Greg Morrison stood at the war table. He was a big man, with a scarred face from an accident in his youth. Now he commanded all of Earth's military forces, both the ones the aliens knew about and the ones they did not. The peacekeepers are leaving, Greg said. All of them. They're pulling back to protect Zenthari space and their allies. How long before the Keswick reach us? Hayes asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. The room was silent. Everyone knew what Keswick raiders did to the worlds they attacked. They took everything of value and killed anyone who resisted. Sometimes they killed people who did not resist, just for fun. Then it's time, Hayes said quietly. Time to show them what we've built. The secret shipyards went into full production. For 15 years, humans had been building ships in hiding. The facility on the far side of the moon was actually a massive construction bay. The mining operations in the asteroid belt were covers for weapons factories. The research stations orbiting Jupiter were testing grounds for new technology. Now all of that secret work would be revealed. Captain Jake Stevens, now a fleet captain, stood on the bridge of the Vengeance. It was humanity's first heavy cruiser, built with stolen alien technology and human innovation. The ship was beautiful and deadly. Its hull was dark metal that absorbed sensor scans. Its weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. How does she feel? Commander, Nicole Harper asked. She was Jake's second in command now, promoted after years of excellent service. Jake touched the command console. The ship responded to him like it was alive. She feels like freedom. The crew of the Vengeance were the best humanity had. Every officer had trained for this moment. Every system had been tested 100 times. They were ready. Lieutenant Ben Carson was at the weapons station. He pulled up the targeting systems and smiled. Railguns charged and ready. The Keswick won't know what hit them. They're used to energy weapons, Nicole said. Lasers and plasma. They've never faced kinetic bombardment at near light speed. Then we'll educate them. Jake replied. The Keswick arrived exactly when predicted. 40 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They were ugly ships, built for war and nothing else. Spikes and armor covered every surface. Their weapons were already powered up. The Keswick commander was called Grath Nor. He was a massive creature, with 4 arms and thick scales. He had raided 100 worlds and never lost a battle. Earth looked like easy prey. Small planet, weak defenses, Grath Nor said to his officers. We take what we want and move on. Anyone who fights, we kill. Simple. His ships moved forward, expecting to crush Earth's defenses in minutes. The orbital platforms fired first, but the Keswick shields held easily. Grath Nor laughed. This would be over, quickly. Then something strange happened. The shields started to fail. Not from damage, but because the frequency of the weapons kept changing. The platforms were firing energy beams that shifted through dozens of different frequencies every second. The Keswick shields could not adapt fast enough. What is this? Grath Nor roared. How are primitives doing this? Then the human ships appeared. Not just the Vengeance, but 30 other vessels that had been hiding behind the moon, in the shadow of Mars, and among the asteroids. Frigates and destroyers and carriers, all built in secret, all ready for war. Jake's voice went out on all channels. This is Fleet Captain Stevens of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have entered our space with hostile intent. Leave now, or be destroyed. Grath Nor's answer was to fire on the nearest human ship. That was his last mistake. All ships, open fire, Jake commanded. The Battle of Earth's perimeter began. The Keswick expected energy weapons like everyone else used. Instead, they faced railguns that fired solid metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds. The rods punched through Keswick shields like they were paper. Ships that had raided the galaxy for decades were torn apart in seconds. Nicole coordinated the fighter wings. Human pilots flew small, fast ships that moved in ways that made no sense to Keswick, targeting computers. They jinked and rolled and dove in patterns that violated every rule of space combat. The Keswick had never seen anything like it. They fight like madmen, a Keswick officer shouted to Grath Nor. They fight to win, Grath Nor corrected. He was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible error. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships moved in coordinated strikes, hitting the Keswick from multiple directions at once. When Keswick ships tried to retreat, human destroyers cut off their escape routes. When they tried to group together for defense, railgun fire tore through their formations. Ben Carson's targeting system locked onto the Keswick command ship. I have a firing solution on their leader. Disable, don't destroy, Jake ordered. I want to send a message. The Vengeance fired a single shot. The tungsten rod hit the command ship's engine section, precisely placed to cripple but not kill. The huge Kesek vessel went dark and began to drift. Send boarding teams, Jake said. I want their commander alive. Major Kelly Wright led the assault team. She was small, but tough, a veteran of Earth's Marine Corps who had trained specifically for zero-gravity combat. Her team moved through the damaged Kesek ship quickly, stunning or capturing anyone who resisted. They found Grathnor on his bridge, surrounded by dead crew members. He had killed them himself when they suggested surrender. Now he stood alone, holding a massive weapon. Come then, primitives, he roared. Die with honor. Kelly's team fired stun rounds. It took 6 shots to bring the huge alien down. When he woke up, he was in the brig of the Vengeance, behind bars that could hold a creature 10 times his size. Jake came to see him. Grathnor stared at the human with hatred and something else. Respect. Maybe. Or fear. You are not primitives, Grathnor said slowly. What are you? We're humans, Jake answered. Remember that name. Tell everyone you meet. Tell them what happens when you attack humanity. You broke all the rules of war. You did not fight with honor. Jake leaned closer to the bars. We fought to protect our home. We fought to win. There is no honor in losing. There is no glory in being destroyed. We did what we had to do. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light. The communications networks carried images of Kesek, ships burning, of the raiders retreating, of humanity's unexpected victory. On thousands of worlds, military analysts studied the battle recordings and could not understand what they were seeing. The Zenthari Council held an emergency meeting. Ambassador Zekthar, who had first met humans 15 years ago, watched the battle footage for the 10th time. Impossible, another council member said. They were given development restrictions. How did they advance so quickly? They didn't just advance, Zekthar said quietly. They evolved. Look at their tactics. Nothing in our database predicts this. They fight unlike any species we have ever encountered. They violated our restrictions. Someone argued. They saved themselves while we abandoned them, Zekthar replied sharply. We told them. The Galactic Council could not ignore what happened. They called meetings that lasted for days. Some species wanted to punish humanity for breaking the rules. Others argued that humans had only defended themselves. In the end, they reached a compromise that satisfied no one. Humanity would be allowed to keep a defensive fleet. They could trade with some species under supervision, but they still could not vote in council decisions. They were still considered too young, too unpredictable, too dangerous. Ambassador Laura Chen delivered Earth's response to the council. She was a calm woman with sharp eyes who never raised her voice, which somehow made her words more powerful. You offer us scraps and call it progress, she said to the assembled representatives. You allow us to defend ourselves only after we proved we could. You grant us limited trade only because your merchants want access to our markets. This is not respect. This is fear, dressed up as generosity. The council chamber was silent. No species had ever spoken to them this way. But no one could argue with her words. Admiral Greg Morrison gathered his commanders on Mars. The Red Planet had become humanity's military headquarters. In the meeting room were Jake Stevens, Nicole Harper, Ryan Burke, who was now a general, and several others who had fought in the Kesek battle. The council gave us permission to have a defensive fleet, Greg said with a thin smile. They didn't say how big that fleet could be. They didn't specify what weapons we could develop. They left loopholes large enough to fly a battleship through. So we build, Jake said. It was not a question. We build. But more importantly, we think. The Kesek proved something important. The galaxy has been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They're comfortable. They're predictable. That's their weakness. Dr. Kevin Wu joined the meeting via hologram from his research station near Jupiter. His hair was gray now, but his mind was sharper than ever. We've been analyzing combat footage from 100 different species. They all follow patterns. They engage at specific ranges. They use specific weapons in specific situations. It's almost ritualized. Like a dance, Nicole said. Exactly like a dance. Everyone knows the steps. But we don't have to dance. The Human Military Academy opened on Mars with a clear purpose. They would train officers to think differently, to see warfare not as a set of rules but as a problem to be solved. General Ryan Burke became the head of the academy. On the first day, he stood before 200 cadets from Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies. Everything you think you know about space combat is wrong, he told them. Forget what you've seen in council battles. Forget the idea that war has rules. We make our own rules. And the first rule is this: win. One young officer named Lieutenant Katie Morgan raised her hand. She was small and quiet, but she had scored highest on the tactical simulations. Sir, if we don't follow the accepted rules of engagement, won't other species see us as barbaric? Ryan smiled. Let them. I'd rather be called barbaric and alive than honorable and dead. Next question. The doctrine that emerged from the academy was revolutionary. Human ships would be built in modules that could be swapped out quickly. A ship could be a long-range bomber one day and a close combat brawler the next. Human tactics would emphasize speed, surprise, and overwhelming force applied at the enemy's weakest point. But Katie Morgan's idea was the most radical. She proposed that humanity should actively avoid fighting fair. Look at this, she showed the senior staff during a presentation. She pulled up footage of a typical council battle. Two fleets meet in open space. They line up and exchange fire until one side's shields fail. Then they either destroy the ship or accept surrender. It's predictable. So we do the opposite, Jake said, understanding immediately. We don't line up. We don't wait for them to be ready. We hit them when and where they don't expect it. Some would call that dishonorable, Admiral Morrison observed. Some would be dead, Jake replied. Katie, develop this further. I want a complete tactical manual based on asymmetric warfare. The opportunity to test these new ideas came sooner than expected. The Vryn Confederacy was a minor power, not strong enough to challenge the Council directly but strong enough to bully weaker species. They decided that human mining operations in the outer colonies were really in Vryn territory. They sent 20 ships to enforce their claim. It was meant to be a simple show of force. Humans would see the Vryn fleet, realize they were outmatched, and give up the mines. That's how these things usually worked in Council space. Captain Nicole Harper, now commanding the carrier Resolute, received orders to respond. Her ship carried 100 fighters and enough firepower to level a small moon. But more importantly, it carried the new human doctrine. They expect us to either run or negotiate, she told her officers. So we do neither. We hit them so hard they forget why they came. The Vryn fleet entered the disputed sector in a standard defensive formation. Their commander was called Vex Atal, an experienced officer who had fought in a dozen minor conflicts. He expected the humans to contact him, to argue about territory rights, to threaten legal action through the Council. Instead, human ships appeared on his sensors for exactly 2 seconds, then vanished. Then they appeared somewhere else, fired, and vanished again. Vex's tactical officer could not track them. How are they masking their signatures? The officer asked frantically. I don't know. Just fire at where they were. But by the time Vryn weapons locked on, the human ships were gone. And now, missiles were incoming. Dozens of them, moving in patterns that made no sense. They zigged when they should zag. They split apart and rejoined. The Vryn defensive systems could not predict their paths. Katie Morgan was aboard the Resolute, serving as tactical coordinator. She watched the battle unfold on her screens with satisfaction. They're following their training. They're trying to establish firing patterns, predict our movements. But we're not following patterns. Enemy shields are adapting to our missiles, a weapons officer reported. Switch to railguns. Make them adapt to something else. The battle lasted 30 minutes. In that time, the Vryn lost 5 ships and had 8 more damaged. They never managed to score a single hit on a human vessel. Vexatal could not understand what was happening. His training, his experience, everything he knew about warfare was useless. Then something worse happened. His sensors went dark. Every screen on his ship turned black. His weapon systems stopped responding. His shields dropped. He was floating blind in space. "What's happening?" he shouted. His communications officer, one of the few systems still working, said quietly, "The humans are sending a message." Nicole's face appeared on the main screen. "Commander Vextal, your fleet has been disabled by electromagnetic pulse weapons. Your ships are not destroyed, but they are helpless. We could kill you all right now. But we're not raiders. We're not conquerors. We're just humans defending our territory. Take your ships and leave. If you come back, we won't be so gentle." Vexatal wanted to argue, to threaten, to do something to save his pride. But he was a practical officer. He knew when he was beaten. "We withdraw." "Good decision," Nicole said, and cut the connection. The Vryn ships were towed out of the sector by their own rescue vessels. The story spread quickly. The humans had not just won. They had humiliated a council species without destroying a single ship. It was psychological warfare at its finest. In the council chambers, military analysts from 100 species studied the battle recordings. They ran simulations trying to predict human tactics. They all failed. Human warfare was not based on tradition or established doctrine. It was adaptive, creative, and utterly unpredictable. A Zenthari military expert spoke to the council. "We cannot prepare for humans the way we prepare for other species. They have no patterns. Every battle is different. Every tactic is new. It's like trying to fight smoke." "Are they really that dangerous?" someone asked. The expert was quiet for a moment. "They're more dangerous than any species I have studied in 300 years. Not because they're stronger, not because their technology is better, but because they think differently. They see warfare as a problem to be solved, not a ritual to be followed." On Earth, President Hayes met with his military leaders. "The council is frightened of us now. That's good. Fear creates respect, and respect creates opportunity. They'll try to restrict us again," Admiral Morrison warned. "Let them try. We've proven that restrictions only work if we obey them. And we've also proven that we don't need their permission to defend ourselves." Jake Stevens stood looking at a map of human space. It was growing. New colonies were being established. Trade routes were opening with species who wanted human goods and technology. The Earth that had been caged by the Council 15 years ago was becoming something new. "We've changed the game," he said to Nicole, who had come to Earth for a strategy meet. The Zalthor Empire was older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They had conquered worlds when other species were still learning to make fire. Their warriors were legendary. Their ships were massive fortresses covered in armor. They had never lost a war in their 5,000-year history. Emperor Kragthor ruled the Zalthor from his throne world. He was ancient even by Zalthor standards. A massive creature with natural armor plates and 4 powerful arms. He had watched the rise of the Galactic Council with amusement. To him, the Council was just children playing at government. When he heard about humanity, he dismissed them as insects. When he heard they had defeated the Kessek, he laughed. The Kessek were raiders, not warriors. When he heard they had humiliated the Vryn, he stopped laughing. "These humans are expanding into our territory," he told his war council. "They use trade routes that pass through space we have controlled for 1,000 years. The council says those routes are in neutral space," one advisor said carefully. Kragthor's eyes burned with anger. "The council speaks with the authority we allow them. Those routes are ours by right of tradition. The humans show no respect. Human merchant ships had been using the disputed routes for 6 months. They were faster ways to reach new markets, cutting travel time by weeks. The Zalthor began stopping the ships, demanding they submit to inspections that could last for days. Most captains obeyed, but they were not happy about it. Captain Scott Patterson commanded the merchant vessel Pride of Europa. He carried medical supplies to outer colonies. When a Zalthor warship ordered him to stop for inspection, he refused. "I've been inspected 3 times this month," he said over the communication link. "My cargo is medical supplies that will expire if I'm delayed again. I'm not stopping." The Zalthor commander did not argue. He tried to force a docking. Scott's crew activated the ship's defensive weapons. Small lasers meant for debris but capable of hurting anyone who got too close. The Zalthor warriors who tried to board were killed. The news reached Emperor Kragthor within hours. "Human insects have killed Zalthor warriors. This is an act of war. We will crush their worlds and teach them respect." The Galactic Council called for calm. They asked both sides to negotiate. But Kragthor had already mobilized his fleet. 300 ships, each one a weapon of war, perfected over millennia, began moving toward human space. President Hayes convened an emergency meeting. The military leaders gathered in the war room deep beneath the surface of Mars. Admiral Morrison showed them the tactical situation. 300 Zalthor warships against our 200. Their ships are bigger. Their armor is thicker. Their shields are stronger. In a straight fight, we would lose. "Then we don't fight straight," Jake Stevens said. He was now a fleet admiral, the youngest in human history. "We've been preparing for a war like this since the Keswick. The Zalthor are powerful, but they're predictable. They have 5,000 years of military experience," someone argued. 5,000 years of doing the same thing," Nicole Harper corrected. "They're the ultimate traditional force. That's their weakness." The strategy was bold. Instead of defending Earth and waiting for the Zalthor to attack, human forces would strike into Zalthor territory. They would hit supply lines, communication hubs, and staging areas. They would make the Zalthor pay for every light year they advanced. "We can't win a long war," Jake explained to his captains. "But we can win a psychological one. We make them question if victory is worth the cost." The human fleet divided into small task forces. Each group had a target deep in Zalthor space. They moved fast, using the new jump drives that could travel further than anything in the Council's database. The Zalthor never saw them coming. Captain Nicole Harper led a strike force to the Zalthor Military Academy on their 4th moon. It was a sacred place where warriors trained for decades before entering service. The academy held a graduation ceremony that day. Hundreds of senior officers and military leaders were present. Nicole's ships appeared in orbit without warning. Her Marines, led by Colonel Ben Carson, dropped onto the academy grounds. They moved through the facility like lightning, stunning guards and disabling defenses. Then, they planted human flags on the academy's tallest towers. "This is Commander Harper to Emperor Kragthor," Nicole said on an open channel that everyone in Zalthor space could hear. "Your warriors are brave but slow. Your ships are strong but obvious. Your empire is old and tired. Stand down, or the next flag we plant will be on your throne world." The message was broadcast across the galaxy. The humiliation was worse than any military defeat. The Zalthor, the proud warriors who had never been conquered, had been embarrassed by humans on their most sacred ground. But Emperor Kragthor did not back down. His pride was too great. He gathered his main fleet, 200 ships under his personal command, and headed straight for Earth. "If the humans want war, they will have it. I will see their homeworld burn." Jake had been waiting for this. The Zalthor fleet was powerful, but it was also massive and slow. They had to travel through a region called the Acheron Expanse, a debris field from an ancient supernova. It was the only route fast enough to reach Earth before human forces could regroup. What the Zalthor did not know was that human engineers had been working in the Acheron expanse for months. They had turned the debris field into a weapon. The Zalthor fleet entered the expanse in a tight formation. Their shields overlapped to provide maximum protection. It was textbook military strategy. Exactly what 5,000 years of tradition dictated. Then the mines activated. Thousands of pieces of debris that looked natural were actually remote-controlled bombs. Magnetic accelerators hidden in asteroids fired metal slugs at near-light speed. Directed energy projectors powered up and fired from 100 different positions. The Zalthor formation, designed for maximum defense, became a death trap. Explosions triggered chain reactions. Ships that were too close together damaged each other. In 2 minutes, 37 ships were destroyed and 62 were damaged. Emperor Kragthor watched from his command throne as his fleet died around him. His communications officer shouted damage reports, but Kragthor barely heard them. His mind could not accept what was happening. Then the human fleet appeared. They had been waiting on the far side of the expanse. Now, they struck at the confused and damaged Zalthor forces with precision that was almost beautiful. Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable. All ships. Execute. Protocol. Ragnarok. Protocol Ragnarok was humanity's ultimate battle plan. Every ship knew exactly what to do. They targeted damaged Zalthor vessels first, not to be cruel, but to maximize psychological impact. They cut off escape routes. They used electronic warfare to blind sensors and jam communications. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, only 30 Zalthor ships survived out of 200. The mighty fleet that was supposed to destroy Earth was floating wreckage. Jake opened a direct channel to Emperor Kragthor. Emperor, you have a choice. Surrender now, and your remaining ships can retreat. Continue this war, and we will turn your empire to ash. We do not want to be conquerors, but we will not be victims. The silence lasted for a full minute. When Kragthor finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of an empire's pride crumbling. Your species fights without honor. You use tricks and deception. We fight to win, Jake replied simply. There's a difference. Your answer, Emperor? The defeat of the Zalthor Empire changed everything. Within a month, the Galactic Council held a special session. Every representative knew what they had to do, even if many did not want to do it. Ambassador Laura Chen stood before the Council Assembly as humanity's representative. She wore a simple blue suit. Nothing fancy or military. She did not need to look impressive. Everyone already knew what humanity could do. The Council recognizes Earth and its colonies as a sovereign member with full voting rights. The Council Speaker announced. The words were formal and stiff. All restrictions on human development, trade, and military operations are hereby removed. Laura did not smile or celebrate. She simply nodded. Humanity accepts this recognition. We hope to be partners in building a more peaceful and prosperous galaxy. But everyone in the chamber knew the truth. Humanity had not been invited to join the council. They had forced their way in. The difference mattered. Back on Earth, President Hayes held a press conference. Reporters from Earth and dozens of alien worlds packed the room. Today marks the beginning of a new era, he said. We are no longer newcomers begging for acceptance. We are equals, and we earned that equality through strength and determination. A reporter asked, some species are calling humans aggressive and dangerous. How do you respond? Hayes looked directly at the camera. We are dangerous to those who threaten us. We are aggressive in defending our rights. But we are also fair, honest, and willing to cooperate with anyone who treats us with respect. The choice of how to approach humanity is up to each species. The galaxy's response was mixed. Some species approached humanity with offers of alliance and trade. The Zenthari were among the first. Ambassador Zekthar, who had underestimated humans so badly 20 years ago, met with Fleet Admiral Jake Stevens in private. I misjudged your species, Zekthar admitted. The crystalline being's light patterns showed what might be embarrassment. We all did. We saw your youth and aggression as weakness. We were wrong. We all did. We all did. We saw your youth. Jake poured tea for both of them, a human custom he had introduced to many alien diplomats. You made assumptions based on your experience. Every other species joined the council when they were young and accepted guidance. We just refused to follow that pattern. Why? Why could you not accept protection and guidance like others? Jake thought about the question carefully. Because humans have never been good at accepting limits. We evolved on a world that was harsh and dangerous. We survived ice ages, diseases, predators, and each other. We learned that if we wanted to survive, we had to fight for it. No one was going to save us. That mindset doesn't disappear just because we reach the stars. It makes you formidable allies, Zekthar said, and terrifying enemies. We prefer to be allies. But not everyone wanted friendship. A coalition of conservative species formed something they called the Preservation Alliance. They argued that humanity's rapid rise threatened the galaxy's stability. Their leader was a Zalthor noble named Vex Tarn, from a family that had lost many warriors in the war. Humans break every tradition, Vex Tarn said in council meetings. They ignore established protocols. They fight without honor. Today, they revolutionize warfare. Tomorrow they might overturn our entire way of life. Where does it end? Laura Chen responded calmly. It ends when every species, including humanity, is treated with dignity and respect. We do not seek to destroy your traditions. We simply refuse to be bound by traditions that limit our sovereignty. The debate continued for months, but humanity's position was secure. They had proven their military power. Now they needed to prove they could be responsible members of the galactic community. The opportunity came when a plague struck the agricultural worlds of the Kelsar Union. The disease killed crops and threatened to cause a famine that would affect billions. The Kelsar were not powerful or important, just farmers who fed many other species. Dr. Samantha Torres, now leading Earth's Biological Research Division, took a team to Kelsar space. She worked with local scientists to analyze the plague. Within 3 weeks, they had developed a cure using a combination of Kelsar knowledge and human genetic engineering techniques. We're providing the cure for free, President Hayes announced. No payment required. No favors expected. We help because it's the right thing to do. The gesture resonated across the galaxy. Humans were not just warriors. They were scientists, healers, and problem solvers. Species that had been suspicious began to reconsider. Admiral Nicole Harper led another important mission. Pirates had been raiding shipping lanes in the outer territories. The Council's peacekeepers were spread too thin to respond effectively. Nicole took a task force and cleared out the pirates in 2 months. We're not just defending ourselves anymore, she told her crew. We're proving that strength comes with responsibility. The galaxy is watching to see what we do with our power. Human companies also began making an impact. Brandon Wright's corporation, Stellar Dynamics, developed new engine technology that was faster and more efficient than anything the galaxy had seen. Other human businesses brought innovations in medicine, manufacturing, and agriculture. The economic influence was almost as important as the military power. Species that might have opposed humanity politically found themselves dependent on human technology and trade. The Terran Military Academy on Mars became famous throughout the galaxy. Young officers from allied species came to study human tactics. One of the first alien students was a Zenthari named Tiksha. Commander Katie Morgan taught advanced tactics. She watched as Tiksha struggled with a simulation. You're thinking like a Zenthari, Katie said. You're trying to find the optimal solution according to established doctrine. Is that not correct? Tiksha's crystalline form flickered with confusion. There is no single correct answer. War is chaos. The side that adapts to chaos faster usually wins. Stop looking for the right move and start looking for the move that works right now. Tiksha tried again, this time ignoring traditional tactics. The simulation's enemy was confused by the irregular attacks. Tiksha 1. I see. Human warfare is about adaptation, not optimization. Now you're learning. But success brought new challenges. Some human leaders began to think humanity should take a more dominant role in the galaxy. Senator Paul Martinez argued in the Earth Congress, "We're the strongest military power. Why should we let the Council make decisions that affect us? We should lead." President Hayes opposed this view strongly. "We fought for equality, not domination. The moment we start acting like conquerors, we become the tyrants we fought against. We lead by example, not by force." The debate reflected a deeper question about humanity's. By the year 2195, 38 years after first contact, humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Earth was no longer a single planet struggling for recognition. It was the center of the Terran Federation, which included dozens of colonies across multiple star systems. The Mars headquarters of the Terran Federation was impressive. The building was a mix of human architecture and alien design, showing how much the galaxy had changed. Inside the main hall, flags from Earth nations hung beside flags from human colonies, and even some allied alien species. Fleet Admiral Jake Stevens stood at a window, looking out at the Martian landscape. He was 63 now, with gray hair and lines on his face that spoke of decades of hard decisions. But his eyes were still sharp, and his mind was still tactical. "You're thinking about the early days," a voice said behind him. It was Admiral Nicole Harper, who had retired from active command, but still served as an advisor. "I'm thinking about how far we've come," Jake replied. 38 years ago, we were prisoners in our own solar system. Today, our ships patrol half the galaxy, and some people think we've gone too far." Jake nodded. The expansion of human influence had created tension. Some species worried that humanity would become another empire, conquering and controlling like the Zalthor had tried to do. It was a fair concern. President Daniel Hayes, now in his third term through special election rules created for the new federation, called a summit. Representatives from humanity and their closest allies gathered on Mars. The question was simple but important. What kind of power would humanity be? "We have a choice," Hayes told the assembled leaders. "We can use our military strength to dominate, or we can use it to protect. We can force others to follow our lead, or we can lead by example. What we choose now will define humanity for centuries." Ambassador Laura Chen spoke next. She was older too, but still as sharp as ever. "The galaxy respects strength, but they will only follow wisdom. We've proven we can fight. Now, we must prove we can build." The summit resulted in the Terran Compact, a set of principles that would guide human policy. The main ideas were simple. Humanity would defend itself and its allies without hesitation, but would never start wars of conquest. Humanity would share technology and knowledge with species that treated them as equals. Humanity would respect the traditions of other species, while refusing to be bound by those traditions. "We're declaring that power comes with responsibility," Hayes explained to the media. "We're strong enough to take what we want, but wise enough to know that true strength is in cooperation, not domination." Not everyone agreed. Senator Paul Martinez, who had argued for a more aggressive policy, spoke against the compact. "We're limiting ourselves when we should be expanding. We could control the Council, shape the galaxy in our image." But the majority of humans supported the compact. They remembered being controlled by others and did not want to become controllers themselves. The vote in the Terran Congress was overwhelming. The implementation of the compact began immediately. Human scientists shared advanced medical technology with species that had helped during the Zalthor War. Human engineers worked with alien partners to develop better, faster-than-light travel that would benefit everyone. Human military officers continued training Allied forces, but always as teachers, never as commanders. Dr. Kevin Wu, now considered one of the galaxy's greatest minds, established the Intergalactic Research Institute on Earth. Scientists from 50 species worked there on projects that benefited everyone. The first major project was developing clean energy technology that could help impoverished worlds. My father used to say that knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted, Kevin told his diverse research team. We humans learned more in 40 years than some species learned in millennia because we shared ideas freely among ourselves. Imagine what we can achieve if the whole galaxy shares knowledge. The military also evolved. General Ryan Burke, now retired, wrote a book called Adaptive Warfare that became required reading in military academies across the galaxy. But he also wrote about the limits of military power. A gun can force someone to obey, he wrote, but it cannot make them loyal. True security comes not from being the strongest, but from being trusted. The Terran Defense Academy continued to train the best officers in the galaxy. Commander Katie Morgan became its head after Ryan retired. She pushed for even more innovation in military thinking while also emphasizing ethics and responsibility. One of her star students was a human named Lieutenant Alex Ramirez, who proposed a radical idea. What if military power was used primarily for humanitarian missions rather than combat? We have the fastest ships, the best logistics, the most adaptable forces, Alex argued. When disasters strike, when species need help, we could respond faster and more effectively than anyone. We could be known as protectors, not warriors. Katie approved the idea. Within a year, the Terran Rapid Response Force was established. They rescued colonists from natural disasters, delivered supplies to remote worlds, and helped rebuild after conflicts. The psychological impact was enormous. Species that had feared human military power began to see it as a force for good. The economic influence of humanity continued to grow. Human corporations competed fairly with alien businesses, sometimes winning and sometimes losing, but they brought innovations that raised standards across the galaxy. Employment practices improved. Safety standards increased. Competition became more about quality than price. Brandon Wright, now one of the wealthiest individuals in the galaxy, used his fortune to establish the Terran Prosperity Foundation. It provided loans and support to developing worlds, helping them build infrastructure and economies without exploitation. My grandfather worked in a factory on Earth, Brandon said during the Foundation's opening. He always told me that lifting others up makes everyone stronger. That's true for planets as much as for people. But the greatest change was cultural. Humans brought music, art, literature, and ideas to the galaxy. Human restaurants opened on alien worlds. Human sports became popular. Human philosophy was debated in alien universities. The exchange went both ways, with humans embracing alien culture as well. The mixing of cultures created something new. Young people, both human and alien, grew up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal. The old fears and prejudices began to fade. Ambassador Zekthar, now very old even by Zenthari standards, met with Jake Stevens one final time. They sat in a garden on Earth, a place designed to showcase plants from a dozen worlds. I have lived 300 years, Zekthar said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species grow powerful and then fade. But I have never seen anything like humanity. Is that good or bad? Jake asked with a smile. It is unprecedented. You changed the galaxy in less than 40 years. Not through conquest, but through example. You showed us that the old ways were not the only ways. You proved that youth and inexperience can sometimes see solutions that age and wisdom miss. We had good teachers, Jake said. The galaxy taught us what not to become. Zekthar's crystalline form glowed softly. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson. You had the power to become tyrants, but you chose to become partners. That choice matters more than any battle you won. On the anniversary of First Contact, President Hayes gave a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. He stood at the same place where humans had first been told they were too young, too primitive, too dangerous to be trusted. 38 years ago, we were dismissed as newcomers who needed to be controlled. Today, we stand as partners in shaping the galaxy's future. We did not achieve this through conquest or domination. We achieved it through determination, innovation, and a refusal to accept artificial limits on our potential. He paused, looking at the diverse crowd before him. Humans and aliens stood together, a sight that would have been impossible decades ago. We are still young by galactic standards. We still have much to learn. But we have also taught important lessons. We showed that traditions can be questioned without being destroyed. We proved that cooperation can be stronger than domination. We demonstrated that the future belongs not to those who cling to the past, but to those who adapt to change. Humanity rose from Galactic Newcomer to one of the galaxy's most respected powers. But our journey is not complete. We must continue to prove that power and responsibility can coexist. We must show that strength can serve peace. We must demonstrate that being feared is less important than being trusted. The galaxy is watching us. Future generations, both human and alien, will judge us by what we do with our power. Let them see that humanity chose wisdom over dominance, partnership over control, and hope over fear. The applause lasted for minutes. But Jake Stevens, watching from the crowd, thought about the future. Humanity had earned its place through strength, but could they keep it through wisdom? Would future generations remember where they came from and stay humble? Or would they become arrogant like the empires they had defeated? He did not know the answer. No one could predict the future. But he believed in humanity's ability to adapt, to learn, to grow. They had come from a harsh world that forced them to evolve or die. That heritage of survival and adaptation would serve them well. That night, Jake stood on a balcony looking at the stars. Nicole joined him, bringing 2 glasses of wine. "To humanity," she said, raising her glass. "To humanity," Jake echoed. "And to the galaxy we helped create." They drank in silence, 2 old warriors watching the stars and wondering what challenges tomorrow would bring. But they were not afraid. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived. They would do so again, as many times as necessary. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity. Now, humanity would prove they deserved that respect for generations to come. The story of how Earth rose from newcomer to power was complete. But the story of what humanity would do with that power was just beginning. Future. Would they use their power responsibly? Or would they become another empire, like the Zalthor? Fleet Admiral Jake Stevens, now in his late 50s, addressed the graduating class at the academy. 20 years ago, we were told we were too young to matter. Today, we are one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. That power is both a gift and a burden. We must use it wisely, or we will become what we despised. He looked at the young faces before him, both human and alien. The galaxy is changing because we changed it. We showed that newcomers can challenge old empires. We proved that innovation beats tradition. But remember this: we earned respect through strength, and we must keep that respect through wisdom. The graduation ceremony ended with a traditional human and Xanthari ceremony combined. It was symbolic of the new galaxy that was emerging, one where humans were no longer outsiders but leaders shaping the future. On Earth, people looked up at the stars with pride. Their species had gone from being controlled and dismissed to being feared and respected. The journey had been hard, but they had proven something important. Humanity would not be caged, controlled, or conquered. They were survivors who adapted to any challenge. They were innovators who turned problems into opportunities. They were warriors who fought not for glory, but for freedom. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity. Now humanity had to prove they deserved that respect by being more than just a military power. They had to show they could build, heal, and lead. The next chapter of human history was just beginning, and the whole galaxy was watching. Another long pause. Then, quietly, we withdraw. The news exploded across the galaxy. The Zalthor Empire, undefeated for 5,000 years, had been crushed by humans in a single battle. Military academies on 1,000 worlds would study this battle for generations. The question everyone asked was the same. How did newcomers defeat an empire? The answer was simple, but hard for most species to understand. Humans did not fight the way the galaxy fought. They did not follow rules that had been established over millennia. They looked at warfare as a problem to be solved with whatever tools worked best. More importantly, humans were survivors. They came from a world that tried to kill them at every turn. They had evolved to adapt, to innovate, to never give up. These traits, which seemed barbaric to the civilized galaxy, made them the most dangerous military force in known space. On Earth, President Hayes addressed the planet. We did not choose this war, but we finished it. Let the galaxy know that humanity will defend itself, its colonies, and its interests with whatever force is necessary. We ask for peace, but we are always prepared for war. The age of humanity dismissing was over. The age of humanity feared had begun. Ing. The question is, what do we do now? Nicole smiled. We keep changing it. We keep them guessing. We keep proving that humanity can't be predicted, controlled, or stopped. Some species will hate us for that, and some will respect us. I'll take respect over pity any day. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Humanity was not just another species to be managed and controlled. They were something new, something unexpected. They were the species that refused to play by the old rules. And in a galaxy that had grown comfortable with tradition, that made them the most dangerous force in known space. We would protect them, then we pulled our forces away when real danger appeared. They had every right to defend themselves. On Earth, President Hayes prepared a broadcast. It would go out on every frequency, to every corner of Council space. The message was simple and direct. For 15 years, you have told us we are too young, too dangerous, too primitive to govern ourselves. Today we defended our home against raiders who have terrorized the galaxy for generations. We did not ask for your help. We did not need your help. We will never again accept being treated as lesser beings. We demand full recognition as a sovereign species with all rights and privileges. We ask this once, peacefully. Do not make us ask again. The words echoed across 12,000 worlds. The newcomers, the primitives, the species that needed to be controlled, had just proven they were stronger than anyone imagined. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. And that was exactly what humanity wanted. The plan began to take shape. Humanity would pretend to obey. They would act grateful for the protection of their alien masters. But in secret, they would build. They would learn. They would prepare. And when the time came, they would show the galaxy that humans were not primitives to be controlled. They were survivors who had clawed their way to the top of Earth's food chain. They were innovators who turned imagination into reality. They were warriors who never gave up. The Galactic Council thought they knew what humans were. They were wrong. And that mistake would change the galaxy forever. 2 years passed in careful preparation. The aliens saw humans building small defensive platforms and smiled at their primitive efforts. They did not see the hidden shipyards on the far side of the moon. They did not notice the weapons testing in the depths of Jupiter's atmosphere. They did not understand that every smile and thank you from human diplomats hid burning anger and cold determination. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as newcomers who needed guidance. Soon, they would learn their error. Soon, they would learn to fear.